What is up, you guys? This is Coffee and Culture, and I am your host, Alicia Marie, and I am so excited that you guys are here. I have been waiting to do this podcast for so long, and I am so excited to share a little bit about me, why I'm starting this podcast, what this podcast is about, all the things. So let's dive on in. But first, it wouldn't be Coffee and Culture without the coffee. You know what I'm saying? I am a diehard coffee addict. For a long time, I was refraining from using the word addict because I was like, I'm not actually addicted. I think it's a full blown addiction at this point, but honestly, I'm here for it. I'm okay. There could be worse things. And it just makes me happy. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, for me, it's more about the experience. I just love going into a coffee shop, love talking to my baristas, love ordering the same thing iced vanilla oat milk latte. You're never going to change my mind on it. Okay. So, this is Coffee and Culture. I am so excited to talk to you about why I decided that name, what the point of this podcast is, why you should care, why you should even listen. Listen, I know that there are so many podcasts out right now. And to be honest, I debated doing this for a long time because I didn't want to be one of those girls that was just hopping on the bandwagon, hopping on the trend to be like, okay, I'm going to do a podcast because everybody else is doing a podcast. I wanted to make sure that it was the right timing, that I had the right motives for it, and just that I was in the right space to actually be able to say things that were impactful and life giving and not just another voice in the noise. And so, I've really thought about this a lot, really just prayed on the right timing for this. And so I am really, really excited to dive into a little bit of my story and just why I decided to start this in the first place. And so basically, ever since I was a little girl, I can remember I was 7 years old and I grew up in the church, and I grew up just really spending a lot of weekends at church. My dad did a lot of the events for catering and things like that for the church. And so when we were there, I remember just these big rooms in the church being open with like tons of toys in them. And so my sister and I would go into those rooms and just like play and hang out and things like that while he was cooking and preparing food for the events. But I so specifically remember there was this stage in one of the rooms, and on the stage there was this microphone, and I remember just being so drawn to the microphone. I just ran over there, and all I wanted to do was get on the stage and have the microphone. All I wanted to do was talk into it, and I didn't really know what I was saying. I mean, I was a little kid, and so I would just kind of talk and say whatever. But as I got older, even like 11, 12, 13, I was obsessed with creating content, like obsessed. It never went anywhere because, I mean, what would I have posted on like AOL or something? You know what I'm saying? So it didn't go anywhere. But I remember just from a young age, I would grab a phone and I would record myself, and it kind of went through different things. I would either pretend I was doing like an ad, or I would pretend I was sharing something to do with like my faith to people, or I would just talk about a subject that I was passionate about, and I would record myself. And through that process, I would watch it back and I would start editing all the parts that I was like, I don't love that I said this way, or I feel like I could have done this part better. And so that just started from an early age. I was so drawn to creating content through my voice and through creating things where people could listen and engage with. And that kind of just carried on ever since then. And so I have always loved speaking. I've always loved talking about things that other people maybe are uncomfortable talking about, or topics that really matter in culture, but that we just aren't talking about as much, or we're not going into as much detail. And so I have always, always loved this, and I never knew exactly what it would look like. I just knew that I wanted to speak. I knew that I was called to speak in some kind of capacity. And I remember when podcasting came out, it's obviously more recent. And so when it came out years ago, I remember seeing it, and instantly I was like, oh my gosh, that's it. Like, I had no idea what I wanted to do prior to that. But then I saw this and I was like, that's everything that I've already been doing for years. I just didn't know I had a name. I didn't know it was called podcasting. And so ever since that moment, I was like, I'm going to start a podcast one day. But if you know anything about me, you know that I do not do things without really feeling called to do it in that moment and without really feeling a peace on it. And so I just never felt the peace to do it. And it's something I've held off on doing for a long time. And if I'm honest, there's a lot of things I was just really nervous about. Like, are people actually gonna care? Are people gonna listen? There's so many other people that have so many amazing things to say. Is what I have to say actually important? And here's what I've noticed about that. Through that process, I've realized that everybody has something different to say. Everybody has a story. Everybody has something that they've been through. Everybody has some type of wisdom that they carry. And so I might not be the person for you, but I know that I carry things that are for certain people. And so that's really my goal, is whoever wants to come along for the journey, you are more than welcome to come. I just want you to stay. I want you to learn. I want you to grow. I want you to ask questions and just be here and have fun. And so that's really the point of this podcast, is just to engage and ask questions that maybe we're not really getting the answers to in culture. And so you'll notice in the title, it says coffee and culture, right? And the culture is spelled with a K, which you're probably like, why are we spelling with a K? So let me get into a little bit of my background story to kind of catch you up, and then we'll go into that and what this podcast is all about. So like I said, I grew up in the church. I gave my life to God when I was 7 years old. So yes, I'm a Christian. It is the best thing about me, the most important thing about me. And there's some of you that are already ready to check out because you're like, it's not really my thing. I don't know how I feel about that. Not really wanting to get advice from someone who's a Christian. And I get it. But can I just encourage you to maybe just stay, and maybe you'll just find either something new, or you'll find a new question that you didn't think of before, or maybe just hear a different perspective that you haven't heard before. And so I would just encourage you to just give it a shot and just try and see what happens. But I grew up in the church, gave my life to the Lord when I was 7 years old, and didn't really know what that looked like. And we can get into my story another time. Maybe I'll do a whole other podcast on my story and what that actually looks like and all the details behind it. But for today, we're going to give the shortened version. So basically, like I said, grew up in the church, gave my life to the Lord when I was 7. Probably already said that a few times. We're rolling with it. And I grew up not really having a relationship with God, though. So I went to church pretty much every Sunday, grew up in the youth group, all that kind of stuff, but didn't really have a relationship with God. And I definitely would worship him occasionally. I would definitely talk to him occasionally, but it wasn't a relationship. I was not reading my Bible. I was not really praying. And pretty much that carried on all the way until high school, and actually up until college. So in college, I made some really poor decisions. Also in high school, which we could talk about that another time, but just a lot of really poor decisions when it came to men. I just really didn't have a lot of self-value. I didn't have a lot of self-worth. And so I just gravitated towards any man that gave me any kind of attention, which led to some really horrible situations and led to some really painful things that I've had to process through, things that I just walked through that I shouldn't have ever had to walk through. And so that carried on into college. When I got into college, it was my sophomore year, and I was just the most depressed I had ever been. I was the most broken I had been. I was just so, I don't know, I just didn't have a lot of self-worth, if I'm honest. And so I remember the end of that year, I literally said to the Lord, I was like, God, I was like, I am just going to do whatever I want this year. And this is exactly what I said, which I know is going to sound crazy, but I said to the Lord, I'm going to screw up my life. I said, I'm going to drink whenever I want to. I'm going to sleep around whenever I want to. I'm going to party whenever I want to, and I'm going to screw up my life. And I said, I will come back to you eventually, but just not right now. And when I tell y'all, he had other plans for me. That summer just completely changed my life through confessing with some people what I was actually really going through. And then also just really, really encountering the presence of Jesus in such a tangible way. These things radically changed my life. I went on to ministry school a few years later. That also changed my life so much. And ever since then, it has just been a journey with God. Things have not been perfect. Trust me, we can get into a bunch of the stories later on at some point. Life has not been perfect. I have not been perfect. I've made some crazy mistakes, even as a Christian, some some things that just really have shaped my life and that the Lord in His kindness has redeemed. But yeah, it's just been a journey. And at this point in my life, I have such a beautiful relationship with God. He is my absolutely just favorite person. He is and has changed my life so much. I would not be who I am today without him. And so when I thought about doing a podcast, I was like, okay, what what should I talk about? There's so many different topics, but I was trying to really figure out what is the theme for all of these topics, all of these things that I care so much about, that I've walked through, that I feel like I have personal insight into. What is a really good theme? And I realized that the thing that I care most about is people becoming more free, more whole. So, what does that look like? So, I believe that culture defines so many things for us, that every single place we walk into, that there is a culture, right? And so, think about your workplace, think about your friends, think about your home environment. All of those things have a culture. And whether you believe it or not, whether you see it or not, I want you to just start thinking about those things. Every single place has a different culture. I know for me, there's been some work environments that I'm like, ooh, this is really toxic. Like, this is a toxic culture. And then there's some other places I've been in that I'm like, wow, this is so encouraging. This is so life giving. Or maybe you have some friends where you get around them and you're like, dang, I leave and I feel like really negative about life. I feel really down about myself and my life, and just like I complain the whole time. And then maybe you have some friends where you get around them and you leave and you're like, wow, I feel encouraged. I feel like I can chase after dreams that I want to do in life. Maybe you feel uplifted. And so, whether you know it or not, those are all different cultures that we're a part of. Different places set different boundaries and different cultures for the way that we live, for the way that we process through things, through the way that we show up to an environment. And so, when I started thinking about this, I was like, okay, what is the culture that we are a part of? And is that culture actually bringing us more freedom, or is it bringing harm to our life? And I think that there's a lot of things in today's culture that it wants to tell us that if you do this thing, you can be really happy. If you do this thing, you'll be really successful. If you follow this way of the culture, if you listen to this music, if you watch this thing, if you get this job, if you have this relationship, if you do this thing by the time you are this age, you will be happy and successful. And it's all centered around a culture that we believe. And so, my goal with this is really to get us to look at what is the culture that we have, that we are surrounded by, and is it benefiting us, or is it causing us more harm than it actually is causing good? And so, obviously, like I said, I am a Christian, and so the perspective that I'm going to take is from what I call a kingdom perspective. What does that mean? Well, I believe that we operate as Christians from a heavenly kingdom. That means that the things that the world says are good and can make you happy and successful usually aren't the things that the kingdom says. The kingdom usually has an opposite mindset to what the world has the mindset of. And so, through that lens, my goal, because I believe that when we follow Jesus, that we can become the most whole, the most free that we've ever been, and that we operate under his kingdom, because that's the standpoint that I have, and that's the belief that I hold so firmly. I so truly believe that if we adapt that mindset, his mindset, the kingdom culture mindset, that we can actually create a life through him and with him, that it will be so fulfilling, it will be so joyful, it can be so full of hope and expectancy, and that it can be so full of the things of God, that we can walk in our God-given identity, we can walk in the calling that we were always meant to live in, and we can bring that kingdom culture into any culture that we go into. And so my biggest question would be, is the culture that you are living in, is it making you more free, or is it bringing more harm than it is good to your life? And those are things we're going to tackle in this podcast. I want to just go through different topics that maybe the church doesn't talk about enough, or different topics in society that maybe we don't talk about enough, and kind of just break them down and say, are these things bringing us more life? Are they bringing us more freedom? Are they bringing us more wholeness? And if not, how do we actually live a life that is more free, that is more whole? And so that is the point of this podcast. And I am just so excited to dive in. I'm so excited to talk about what greater freedom looks like in Christ. Y'all, I'm gonna take a sip of coffee real quick. Wow, that's so good. Okay, so why did I call it coffee and culture? For me personally, and I don't know about you guys, but I feel like there has been so many conversations I've had with friends, with mentors, just with people I really look up to and trust. And a lot of those have happened at coffee shops. There have been a lot of times I've sat across from a friend, like I said, or a mentor where they've asked me a question that has just changed the trajectory of a situation I've been in, or they've given me advice that has made me think about something, or they've just given me encouragement and they've championed me in the season that I was in and whatever I was going through or whatever I was wanting to do. And so many beautiful conversations I feel like happen over coffee. And that's really my heart behind this. I want this to feel like you are sitting across from a friend. We are just having coffee together. We are hanging out. We are talking about things that is relevant in culture today, and just discussing them, that we're having fun while we're doing it, but we're also growing, we're also being challenged, we're also walking away with questions and maybe just things that we want to look into, dive into deeper questions we have, whether it comes to culture, faith, whatever it may be. And so that's really my heart behind this podcast. I just want it to feel like you're sitting across from a friend. We're having a good cup of coffee together. We are chit-chatting and we are just growing together. And so I'm just really excited, like I said, for this podcast. I'm so excited for what this is going to look like. And so I'm just going to put out a few episodes, and this is going to be season 1. And because this is all about freedom, I really just want us to tackle a little bit more of like what freedom is, why it's something we should even want or desire, why it's good for us, and how we can actually get more whole and more free. And so the next few episodes, we're kind of just going to tackle that just to really create a good foundation going forward. And then from there, I want to just talk about so many different topics. So if there's topics you want to talk about, there's things you have questions about, please feel free to put them down below. Like, subscribe, do all of the things. And like I said, I'm just so excited that you guys are here. Did I even say where I was from? I don't think I said that. I'm sorry, guys. I jumped right into it. I live in Dallas, Texas. I did not say that. And I'm initially from the East Coast. I feel like we should do a little bit of a quick intro. I know this is at the end, but this is my brain. Welcome to my brain, okay? So East Coast girly by heart. Live in Dallas, Texas right now. I'm 29, almost 30, which is crazy. Like I'm like, am I sure? Am I? Okay, that feels like it went by really fast. But anyways, it's a little bit about my life. I love coffee, obviously. Love working out. Love aesthetic looking things. Love creating content, podcasting, all the things, writing, etc., etc. So we can get to know a little bit about me as we keep going with this journey. But I am praying for you guys. I'm praying for just anyone who listens to this, just praying that that you would stick around and that hopefully we can just get more connected as time goes on and we can grow and learn together. So I am so excited that you're here. So excited if you stayed and listened to the end of this. And that's it. Have a good week, guys, and I will talk to you soon. Okay, bye.